Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am MR, and together with Taurus, we had a burning question in our hearts that we needed an answer to. We have searched far and wide and found what happened to a certain indie VN dev with the bluest of scarves. It's a pleasure to have you and to welcome to the podcast, James.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I'm James. I'm the founder and CEO of BlueScarf James, and I created this way back in college, essentially, or over 10 years ago. And I've actually been in the gaming industry for over 10 years now, and I've worked at everything from the server side of the industry to the AAA. And right now I'm actually working over at Mythic Talent. So I've been all around the place.
Wow, very impressive, very impressive. But more than that, you're also a visual novel fan, anime fan, into that sort of stuff. Is it safe to assume?
Oh, absolutely. Like, all of us here are incredibly into this, and visual novels are probably my biggest genre that I'm into. I've always been into anime my entire life. It's been one of my driving factors to basically ever make games, and I've always wanted to make something that is a visual novel and is anime, and now I've finally been able to do it.
Oh man, that's so cool. I think at some point in any fan's life, they've always got the dreams of being a developer, of having their own world building that's going on in their head and imagining, oh well, what if I could share this with the whole rest of the world and it'd be so cool and it'd be awesome and fans would love it and stuff. And of course, I think that just ends up as, a little bit of head in the clouds, just imagining that stuff. So I always have a ton of respect for the developers who put in all of the hard work that's involved in developing this stuff. But first, as with any visual novel fan, it's always fun to ask them, what was your first VN? How'd you get involved into the world of visual novels?
Yeah, Katawa Shoujo was actually my first one. I know that it's a really big one in the community.
Classic.
And right, that one is absolutely incredible. But my all-time favorites that have made me and pushed me to honestly make my own was Danganronpa. I absolutely love it. And eventually, Your Turn to Die showed me that with the tools that developer has, and that he's able to just push beyond their natural limit, you can truly do anything you want with what you dream, and that's where we are now.
Mm-hmm. What is it specifically about Danganronpa or with Your Turn to Die that filled you with that much inspiration? Because there's a lot of cool things that they both do, and certainly there were a lot of inspiration to all sorts of people who were their first time dipping their toes into visual novel adjacent items. But there are plenty of video games that also have that popping style, or that have the high stakes environments, or who have the I suppose you could say gameplay of figuring out a mystery for yourself. And what was it in these two titles that really struck out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that what's really unique about the visual novel genre in general is that all of us are drawn to characters, which is why when you look on Steam, the very predominant thing that's on every single one of the thumbnails for every single visual novel game is some sort of character. And every single game that doesn't have this is typically not ranked very highly. And this is because we're so drawn to these characters. It's what we want to see. We want to meet them. We want to know their stories, and we love it. And all these other games, like you're saying, like some anime RPGs, honestly, even gacha games, they've got compelling stories and they've got lovable characters. Even like Genshin and Honkai, they've got lovable characters, but we're really drawn to it in these visual novels. Even like Song of Saya has got just an incredible depthful story that you can really think about a lot, and the characters are really deep, but there's not a lot of gameplay. It's just literally images with text scrolling. And you just get to fully dive into what they are and their world and love it. And it's got a big community because of it. So Danganronpa, for all the characters that are there and all of these visual novels that you fall in love with, it's for them, what they've written about the people.
Mm-hmm. I know there's the classic, the stereotypical bad review that a visual novel gets where someone's like, hey, this is just a whole bunch of reading, so boring. And they give it a thumbs down, and it's like, okay, you missed the whole point. It's a visual novel. No, there's no gameplay. But still, and I'm not bad-mouthing that, because there are plenty of people who just, reading isn't their taste and all. But with a visual novel, yeah, you make great points about the characters. It's about these people who can get so involved into their stories that you, the reader, become so engrossed because you want to see what happens. You want to see the plot twists or the developments or the suspense of what happens to these people. I had never really thought of it before about how you mentioned, yeah, you got to put a character on the title, on the thumbnail of these visual novel ads. But, you're right. I think about it, and so many of them have some sort of character either as the highlight or as, a shining beacon of what the story can pull off. And so that's really interesting. Are those the kinds of discussions or the thoughts, the conversations you have that are involved with visual novel development?
It's a very, very big thing. I've had to do a lot of research. As a one-man army for this, I've definitely had to do a lot of research and trying to optimize this, so that I can try to get the game in front of as many people who may be interested. And to your point about what you were saying earlier, people who are interested would be like the same kind of people who when Baldur's Gate came out, they'd be like, I'd play Baldur's Gate, but it'd need to be a first-person game. And I'd be like, well, that's true, but that's just not the game. So I appreciate you looking into it, but maybe it's not for you.
That's true. As much as we would like to, a product can't appeal to literally everyone.
Yeah, well said.
But yeah, why don't you tell us about your title? You mentioned that you're the leading one-man army of BlueScarf Games, but what can you tell us about your product?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened to Squad 7 is basically like a thriller mystery title that I actually kind of put together when things were really heated, kind of during a lot of political problems going on, especially at the height of ICE. I'm gonna throw that out there. The actual story itself doesn't contain a lot of that. I don't want it to be very politically heated, but I do think that it's interesting to look at it from that lens. And in general, it has a lot of anti-government. The government, can you trust it? Can you actually believe what's coming from the top down? And you'll get that from the demo and also from the full game. Your own boss is going to be constantly talking to you. You're not sure whether you want to trust him because he kind of looks down on you and this kind of thing. And in general, a bunch of distrust that you kind of come to be used to from other visual novels, just like Return to Die or Danganronpa, where you don't know if people you do like you can trust, or if the guy who's a dickhead you maybe should be trusting.
Yes, because in this title, it appears that you are playing the role of a soldier who's out in the desert, tasked with some manner of sweeping the area for scary monster things, maybe? Is
Correct.
that right?
You are. Yep. You are Orion. He is the front man, which is like essentially the killer. You have an implant that gives you 10 years worth of training in 2 weeks. So you are a bona fide veteran murderer. But you're just actually a civilian guy. You're normally a visual novel lover, anime lover, and you just got here 2 weeks later and you're out on the job. And you are now tasked with going to fight an alien threat with this brand new squad that you've only known for a little bit. It's essentially your first tour with them. And this squad is composed of 2 teams, Team 1 and Team 2. And this whole squad is Squad 7. You're more familiar with your boss, who is Briar, and then your medic, who is Eileen. And all of you have to kill these apparently aliens who are sort of invading the United States. And they're called Eidolons. They look sort of canine-esque. When you look at them, they drool almost like from Resident Evil. Those like demon dog things, or maybe from Call of Duty Zombies, as you might think. Those kind of monsters that are very dog-like, and you need to go and flush them out to save the United States with your squad. But the more and more that you look at them, your brain sort of hurts. You get these sort of zaps from that government implant that you were supplied that was supposed to give you training, and you eventually see these canine monsters as something other than the monsters that they are, and they appear human. And you begin to question, are they monsters at all? Should I even keep this implant in me? And the person who keeps pushing me to kill these things, who would be my boss Briar, should I be listening to him?
You mentioned earlier about the themes, and really themes are what make a story timeless. I mean, they exist in almost every story, ranging back from hundreds, thousands of years and whatnot. And that sense of distrust is always a classic theme. You see that in Danganronpa, you see that in Your Turn to Die. And I think that's really interesting how you're featuring it in your game of, you have a chain of command, but is that really the smartest thing you should be doing? And how much do you want to let your own emotions come into play? Because this very much is a life and death scenario, right?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone here is equipped to the teeth. And just like many other visual novels, there's multiple endings. There's more than 8. And in some endings, you could choose to follow a path that may not be very morally right, but you survive, and I mean, you get to walk away scot-free. So perhaps it might not have been the best thing, but you live, and that's better than dying.
Yep. MR, you read the demo for his title, What Happened to Squad 7. Did you have any thoughts about it?
Oh, definitely. I even shared that on one of our episodes before. It was
I remember
hard
that.
to... Okay. And it was hard to necessarily put a pin of how I seen the story, because obviously it was a demo. It was just a slice of what is to come. My biggest gripes came more on technical level. But overall, I liked the way it went with what it tried to portray. It was nice. And full disclosure, and I'm extremely humbled that you approached us at the start when talking about your own game. And I relented and I said, you know what, I'll look into that, I'll play it, and I'll tell you what it is. And that spiraled into us preparing an episode about it, I mean, including your title. And I said to myself, you know what would be the best way for James to respond to my take? It's probably to invite him to the podcast, and here you are. Yeah, I quite like it. I had my gripes, technically, obviously, what I said before. And honestly, one thing that came to my mind, specifically now that I know with all the examples beforehand that you just described, what are the ends that made you love the medium? Because you mentioned Katava Shoujo, but you went beyond that. Were there any specific VNs that made you love the medium and consequently made you maybe create your own?
Yeah, there are so many VNs that I really, really like. I think that I started the Katava Shoujo, and I also dived a lot into the RPG Maker realm that totally made me fall in love with the VN medium. And there's a lot more in the middle there that I also played that were primarily text that didn't have a lot of gameplay. To name a few that were actually specifically RPG Maker were like Ib and Madfather and Witch's House. And there's so many more that were incredible. I just can't even name them all. They're all flying through my head right now. But they all revolve around just a really, really compelling story with twists that you just don't expect, and endings that make you want to replay it and see something new. And that's really, really cool. So that's why I just always knew that I really wanted to make something that was even remotely like that. I think I even made a social media post that said, I'd like to make my game dark, but I'll never, ever be as good as Song of Saya.
Ah.
Mm.
Okay.
And I mean, that's not even like an insult or anything. Saya no Uta just really stands in a tier of its own.
It absolutely does. Like, just thinking about like how dark it could be, but all the different other worlds that they could have lived in, really, really incredible writing.
I wonder about that because you mentioned that your studio has been open about 10 years ago. Was telling the stories that resonate with people was the drive that made you go and create content like that?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. This is something that actually Toros was talking about. Because of how many iterations a developer will go through, I have actually created probably about, I don't know, 6 or 7 games, and none of them have seen daylight. There's one of them that is on Steam, that is much closer to like a Danganronpa. But I ended up having to pull development because my primary artist on it and my main writer on it, who I was working with and I was just doing the coding for, both had to deal with college. So I ended up having to pull back on that one, which is why I ended up pursuing a totally different direction and a totally different game, because I was really passionate about this story as well. And this story was totally different. So that's where What Happened to Squad 7 came in. And it's a completely different direction. But I learned so many different things, and that's why my game, which has to do with where all the technical problems you were talking about last episode came from, isn't even in Ren'Py, which is where probably a lot of technical problems would have gotten solved.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about the whole development side of things, because there's all sorts of problems that can happen in development of a work. And I mean, you kind of alluded to that with some of, your previous stuff, What Happened to Squad 7. I mean, have any of them in particular been big learning experiences for you? I'm sure you have some advice for any first-time developers that may be listening of like, oh, here's what I wish I could have done differently.
The big thing really is iterating on your past experience. Like I have 2 other ones. Pressure Point is the name of the previous one that is on Steam, and I essentially have had to drop. I'd like to come back to it at one point, but I'll need to pick it up from a brand new angle. There's another one that I worked on called Oaths and Orchids. That was more of a actual like dating sim that I worked on with someone else, and it's iterating on everything that you know, and you're able to constantly learn a new thing. So essentially what I learned with Squad 7 while writing it is one of the problems that you actually discussed in the last episode, MR, was when you would revisit the shed, as an example, you would see the same line of text and it would describe the shed. And that was quite annoying for a reader. But actually, when in the full game, that part is removed. So when you will revisit the same location, you won't see that happen again. The character will be like, I've already been here, and let's just like look around the room. And instead, I'd like to go back and fix that for the shed now as well, now that I know how to fix that. So even over the course of Squad 7, I've iterated on my own knowledge of programming, and that kind of work for a developer is just immensely impactful on how it shows up for even a player.
When I made that comment, I visualized in my head a point and click kind of game in which you have to switch scenes, but later down you go back to the previous scene. In your game, what happened is a character reacted as if this is the first time they are outside and they're describing for the first time the shed. I've seen that so many times. I'm like, wait, what is going on? And I said in the episode, maybe introduce some sort of a state. If you've reached that state previously, the text will switch. into saying, "Oh, I'm outside again." But you're saying you fixed it in a different way. Okay.
Yep. Well, that's absolutely it. You introduce some sort of state and allow it so that instead of visiting, essentially the way it was set up is that in the very first time that you'd visit there, that would have all of the technical know-how to link to all of the extended scenarios. So every single time that you'd revisit it, it would still go to the original one. That's the problem. But now there's a state that bounces you to a new one that introduces the scenario for people who've already seen it. Exactly like sort of your outlining. So with that, everything is a much better experience for the player, and that's already set up in the full game.
Okay. You know what? When you talked about unreleased titles, as well as iterating over your work to learn more and more and improve over time, honestly, I'm not a game dev, right? But
I'm sorry, you're not a what?
I'm not a game dev, not a game developer. But the way you said it reminded me of how I dabble with game modding. I have a lot of unreleased game mods that I iterate over and try to polish it more and more. And I wonder if there is some sort of a spark of inspiration that strikes you, and then you go full mode on your game or another iteration to improve and introduce something. Because that's how I approach my modding. And there's a ton of mods I created and never released because they are super cringe, but I've iterated over my knowledge of how to mod a particular title and then try to get better and better at that. Maybe finally there will be something released. Maybe.
Tons and tons of times. I have we talked about this as well a little bit before recording Toros, but I'm a huge fan of Fire Emblem, which also includes a lot of actual visual novel aspects. And at one point I wanted to actually create something that was actually like a multiplayer experience of that, in which other people could not only partake in the battling, but also could partake in some sort of visual novel bonding with one another where they would do some writing. And I thought that would be a really cool concept. And I obviously am scoping myself out to do multiplayer there, and that is extraordinarily difficult as a solo person. So that idea, among many, many, many more, has been scrapped.
Wow.
I feel like that's the dark side of game development, is that no one ever sees all the cool scrapped ideas you had to cut.
There's 7, probably many, many more. There's a lot of things that I've worked on that I've shown a lot of people. But yeah, there has been a lot of things, and I actually wrote with a journalist recently about how sad it is that the Stop Killing Games movement hasn't passed in a lot of places, because we're seeing some titles like Elder Scrolls Blades and the old Maple Story 2, and those games that developers poured so much time into are getting shut down forever, and it's like gonna just become lost media.
I can't believe we broached that topic or that title during the preparation. But going back to scrapped ideas, I think in the recent years there's also a push of archaeological rediscovery with all the restoration mods. So I wonder if you have enough of those projects in your, let's say, James, dreamland. I wonder how vast your dreamland of ideas has been that you abandoned for one reason or another.
It's quite vast, although I think that like many other game developers, honestly, people like you, MR, with your modding, I'd like to, if I maybe have enough money, or maybe even after Squad 7, I'd like to revisit those concepts. I have 2 different titles that are really meaningful to me. One called the Indigo Project, which is very like cyberpunk in a way, Cyberpunk 2077. It's like people turned into animals in a way with their genetics, or they kind of go very techie and then they kind of fight. That's one thing. And then I have a very romancy thing, but it's actually more romance polyamory, which is the take on it. And I want to go in one of those directions after Squad 7, although it's very, very different.
You mentioned on the topics of inspiration, but do you have any inspiration for your characters in what happened to Squad 7? I know some people, they one of the funniest is when some devs say, yeah, I have this total asshole character, and I named him off this annoying coworker I hate.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that's actually a great question and a great example. So I actually I wrote some of the characters to be very standalone. I wrote the whole story um completely standalone. It was very much based off of what was going on in the atmosphere at the time. And I was very passionate about it. And I'm passionate about the story, but the main character, who is your boss, who, as MR knows, is relentless on you, borderline evil, is truly written with many quotes that are taken nearly directly from someone who used to be a boss of mine at my
Oh,
old AAA game studio. Yes.
oh no.
Imagine like a Blizzard situation, but like worse. Truly somebody who is just deplorable and thinks nothing of those around them. Um, and I wrote him actually. I wrote him to be even. I wrote Briar to be even more evil, and I wrote like really really rude responses. And then one day this boss came over to me and he said some of Briar's lines after I had written them, and it was like it felt so compelling. It was like this real human is like a cartoon character. Like he's like anime. He's feeding into how well I'm writing.
Oh my god. That's always cathartic in a way. Just let it out. You'd be like, oh, here, you furiously writing the ending where this guy gets pantsed and then eats by aliens.
Yeah. There's gonna be. I had an incredible creator who's already played the game, and they are already being like, let me kill him. Let me kill him.
Okay, listen, this is a very important information that you're sharing way too late. So, mental note. Be nice to James, or I'll become the inspiration for the next antagonist, okay?
Thank you, MR. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, power of the pen. So
I
yeah, thanks
appreciate
for
you
letting
guys.
us know about all sorts of stuff about your title. As for you, what are some of your other hobbies you have, aside from being a incredible game dev?
I appreciate that. I sincerely am just entirely in gaming. I play video games all day. Like I said, I work in gaming. I've always worked in gaming. I just live and breathe this stuff. I had to force myself to start working out recently so I don't just raw all day.
And you mentioned some of your favorite video games. Do you have any other ones? Maybe outside of the RPG sphere?
Yeah, I mean, what I've been playing recently that is just super far from all of this is, I mean, everyone, this is just super like normie stuff like Battlefield 6, right? Like just way away from visual novels. Like the shooter genre, which honestly also served as a little bit of inspiration. Like the title you can kind of look at, like a little bit where I wanted to get what the characters looked like. And what I wanted the title to look like and what I want even the music to sound like was very Modern Warfare actually, because despite it being a very shooter game, I actually really respect the old like Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2 story. It was really compelling at the time. So that's where I wanted to get a lot of inspiration because it meant a lot to me as a kid.
I remember it was a topic of discussion on various social medias a while ago about the anime sphere, how important it is to take inspiration from all other walks of life. It's not just entirely about the weeboo interests and circles being self-contained. You also need to look at other human experiences, or, just taking influence from other hobbies and interests and embracing that stuff and mixing it into anime as well. And I think that's also something very important for everything, including visual novels. So I know you were kind of dismissing it as like, oh, it's the normie stuff, but hey, that's absolutely a valuable insight for how you can, incorporate stuff like Battlefield 6 or Modern Warfare, isolating the stuff you like, the cool aspects, and working it into a visual novel product to make it feeling unique, to give it its own spin.
Yeah.
Taurus, don't give me hope. Taurus, now I'll be dreaming of KOTOR 2 inspired VN, okay? Don't give me
That
hope.
would be incredible. Infinity Ward, get on it.
Gosh. You have any other questions, Amar?
No. I mean, I worry when it comes to the episode that we made on the game. I worried about the antagonist, and I urged James not to make him one note, as in he's evil but incompetent. That's what I specifically made. So I hope beyond hope in the final product that he will be complex enough. I'm not saying it has to be super complex, but complex enough. It's not as easy as you can dismiss an evil asshole because he's incompetent. So, please don't spoil me on that, but I hope against hope that won't be the case. Fingers crossed.
I'd like to pick your brain on that just for a second to understand. It's already written, so I can't change it. But I'd like to understand just a little bit because that was a fantastic comment. You guys made some great discussion on that last episode. Do you think that he needs to be very powerful because, or do you think that he just needs to be very influential over the other characters?
I'll answer this way. I feel like it would do disservice to that character if he didn't bring results.
Okay.
So the whole assholishness would fall on deaf ears if he does not bring results. The moment he does bring results, now you have a moral quandary. Yes, that's an assholish person, but as long as he brings results, there are some merit to the way he does things. As a counter example, because we went in the normie sphere, so to speak. Oh my god, that was quite a couple of years ago, but there was Dragon Age Inquisition with our main antagonist, Corypheus. That was absolutely written to be super evil, terrifying, but he brought no results. And I have never even considered him a real threat.
Right.
He had absolutely nothing to show for himself, and to me that was clown behavior at that point.
I agree. Right. I think there is a difference. There are different kinds of villains, one of which is a sniveling, cowardly, annoying person who runs away from any sort of work and just shoves it all on you. But then there's also, like in this case, someone who's seemingly superior to you in every way, whether in results or in social standing or strength and stuff. And that's what just breeds a lot of the resentment. When he treats you like trash and says all these rude things, and then it's like, well, you have to bite your tongue because you've got no ground to stand back on. And that's what pushes that whole conflict in your desire. You're like, oh, one day, I swear, I'm going to show you up and you'll be sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I think for that type of villain, that's the ideal, right?
This is a great, this is really, really interesting to me. I'd say that I think I'm very happy to hear this, and I'm happy to respond that I think Briar will fulfill exactly what you're looking for. He, in a lot of routes, will be the reason you die. In most outcomes, he is relentless, and he offers no compassion, and He, at the end of the day, though, just when you get down to any circumstance where you fight him directly, even when you do overcome him, you will come to find that he is a small piece in a bigger picture, which is, I think, going to be quite interesting. And it will make you realize that maybe he wasn't as powerful as you even thought he was.
Interesting.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so
I mean, the
guess-
worst you can do when it comes to influence an antagonist to make him obsolete or forgettable, because you want that person being impactful and interesting and even love to be hated, right? The worst you can do about the antagonist is to have an apathy, because apathy is death.
Yeah.
Yep. Very well
Great.
said.
So that's a very interesting teaser to leave us off in this episode. Thank you so much for dropping by. It was really interesting hearing about your work with BlueScarf Games and how development is going on what happened to Squad 7, and just getting to know more about your journey as how you got here as a visual novel developer. Thanks again for stopping by, dude.
I really, really appreciate both your time, and thank you so much for having me on. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on Steam and will likely be ready to play soon.
Okay. It was a pleasure having you and listening to your side of the story. And to all our listeners, thank you for listening in. And on that note, venture out.
Venture out.
Venture out!
Yeah.